Okay.
And we're live.
Hello.
Thank you for welcome to the Modern Romantic Podcast, where we celebrate romanticism in our modern age. I am Emily, your host, and I'm here with Trey, my co-host. Welcome, Trey, back to the show.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
It's nice to be back. How are you doing, Emily? It's been a week.
Pretty good. It's been a whole week, a whole big chonky week.
Chonky?
Yeah, it's a chonky, robust week.
It is a chonky, robust week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to start using chonky as an official measurement of time.
I like that.
I'm gonna be like, all right, I'm gonna tell my kids, like, all right, it's time for bed. How long? Chonk, maybe 2 chonks.
How long's a chonk, Dad?
Well, without further ado, on tonight's podcast, we have a musician, songwriter, podcaster, and part-time life coach. Okay, that last one is a joke, but he could definitely be one with his views on life.
The look on his face is so great.
Please welcome to our podcast, Ira Watson.
Hello.
Yay!
Hello. Yay!
Ira, possibly Jesse, possibly Charlene. It was funny when I was, sharing stuff on my social media pages and, trying to promote this thing and whatnot. I was like, I just realized there's like a whole group of people who probably don't even realize my first name is Ira, and that's what I go by in many facets of my life. And then I was like, oh, and further complicated by that is there's a whole podcast where I don't even say about any of my actual legal names. I just go by Charlene.
Tell us about Charlene. What is?
Oh, it's just like a nickname that a friend, one of my best friends, my friend Wes, who's in my band The Menders with me, kind of started using as a sort of fun term of endearment. And then it just slowly caught on to where it was like when you use like a word sort of jokingly, and then you keep using it until it actually becomes a part of your vernacular.
Yes.
That's basically what happened. He just kept using it enough to where other people started using it, and then it just became a thing. So then when I started doing that at my Charlene podcast, I was in between a few names, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to use this. I like a good Sting, Prince, Madonna, Cher kind of. Let's do that.
That's right.
It was funny. I was just talking to my wife about this recently. You know how like if you Google yourself, there's like these like websites that'll bring up, people you might be related to or you're somehow like connected to. So it might bring up like your parents' names or something like that to say possible relations, stuff like that. My wife was looking at, she's like keep making sure she's not got a presence online on these websites, find your address kind of things. And it said possible relations, Ira Watson, Jesse Watson, Charlene Watson. So the internet just thinks Charlene is a person that lives at my house, apparently. So. It's like a split personality sort of thing. Me, myself, and I. That's
You can use this to your advantage. I have done this. So what you do is all of the mail that you want to know how they got your information, you just put that name as the front as the name you're submitting. Or like an email, for instance, you can put, okay, I'm going to sign up to get the emails. I'm going to put this Charlene or whatever name.
Sure.
And I use several. I'm not going to say what they are. And then it'll be like, I see now all of a sudden I'm getting 7 or 8 different kinds of emails from different sources, and they're all using that name. Now I know where it came from.
A nice little hack, yeah. I'll keep that in mind. Or maybe I'll just do like a Shawshank Redemption thing, and I'll embezzle money under one of those names, and then, just run off to Mexico.
Right, they'll come after Charlene, and
exactly.
Yeah,
who does not exist.
And Wes also wrote the music for your podcast, right?
Yeah, it was actually, so like I said, he's in the Menders with me, and we we'll send voice memos and stuff to each other, just like kind of riff ideas or lyrical ideas, whatever. And he sent this riff that he'd come up with, and then right at that time I had written a story and was kind of making like a demo episode, and I didn't have a theme song, and he'd sent me this riff. He's like, I don't know if there's something we can use, but I just wanted to send it to you, see if you could add to it or anything like that. And I said, well, I don't know about for the Menders, but I'm going to instead, can I just use it for my podcast? And he was like, yeah, sure. And it suited that better than I think the sound of our band. So yeah, I think I tweaked a couple things. So but that was his contribution, one of many. He's also someone I kind of bounce ideas off of here and there, and he's helped me with podcast artwork and whatnot. But yeah, Wes Forbes, one of my best buddies.
Nice.
That is awesome. I was thinking that Trey and I should just make our own opening music as well for this show. Yeah.
I feel like it would almost be like lady, 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 lady. Which is such a deep cut back to one of our first episodes.
That's deep cut is probably the kindest way to say that.
Or like sword fighting noises.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't, I'll make this executive decision without any input from any of my other band members. But if you want to use any of our songs, you are more than welcome to use it as a theme song. Okay. It's a great way to bleed listeners too.
Whenever we need a good purge, we'll just
exactly. You're trying to cold the fold a little bit. There you go.
Sorry, everyone.
Well, that's what so the other podcast I do, Best of Worst of, we use the theme song for that is a band that my band, the Menders, has played with a bunch of times back in the day. It's been a while now, but they were a band called Amigo, which is very hard to Google, very hard to find on Spotify. A lot of bands called Amigo, but they are a very good band. The song that we use for that podcast is called The Big Idea. And we've been doing that podcast for about almost 5 years now. The first 20 episodes, we had a different theme song by another band that my band's played with. So the idea was like, I like the idea of every 20 episodes or so, we like change to another local artist that I'm friends with and help promote their music. And we did that one time, and then we've never changed it again because we kind of liked that one better. And it just became like a whole practice of having to listen, find the right thing and whatnot. And that's the intent was there.
So unexpectedly time consuming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a lot harder. Like, it's more than just finding a good song. It's finding the right song,
And
once you find that right song, you got to stick with it.
Well, I know you to have a very large musical repertoire, like a large musical knowledge of things. How do you meet all of these different bands?
Mostly through Wes Forbes, who's his nickname in the band is the Mingler, because he's the one who sticks around after shows to really talk to people and network, and he's just a very, very friendly, sociable guy. He does a great job at making those connections, and when he joined the band, we'd been doing it for a few years. When he joined, that was like his main thing. He's like, I'm gonna get our name out there and to at least some local places. And just through that, we met a lot of bands, and bands would kind of come through the area. We put them on a show that we're doing, or they have us on one of their shows, and then we return the favor when we're doing something. So just kind of create your own little network. And we've just, I think we're I do a lot of self-deprecation. I am it is the artistic medium in which I sculpt, but but we're a good band. But what anything we lack in musical skill, we make up for in jovialness. So I think we're an agreeable band. So I wonder how often some of these, because we play with some really good bands, and I often think like, I wonder if they like us because of our music or just because we're nice.
Which is funny.
Yeah, I'm fine with either one, I suppose. But
That is so cool though that you promote other bands through this method. I mean, or at least that's what you went into it. Like,
yeah,
that's really great, and probably doesn't happen enough in the world, where instead of being in some kind of competition where, oh no, we're only using our own music because we do music too, and you're actually using this as a platform to promote others. That is how it should be, in my opinion, and I love it. What a great idea.
Yeah, we try to, me and the rest of the guys in the Menders have always we've been on we continue to be on that side of it, of seeing how important, just a little bit of help artists can do, the little bit of, again, those kind of artistic communities you can find yourself in, whether it's, a geographical area, or if it's just, like a genre of music or a type of podcast or whatnot. That's what I've always kind of loved about y'all's podcasts, and, the episodes I've listened to, and just talking about it with Trey and whatnot, outside of this. Is that it is, promoting artistry in a lot of different forms. And you guys have had, from what I've seen and from what I've heard, a very eclectic mix of artists, and I think that's awesome. I do think a lot of times when we talk about local art and local artists, and or indie art or indie artists or whatever that might be, we think a lot about music, right? Or maybe some kind of physical medium. But I know you guys have a lot of singers on, and chefs, and a lot of different types of. I know you've had sculptors on, and you had a chocolatier on recently, didn't you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
very delicious.
literal members of royalty. I know that was one.
Yes,
Yeah.
that too.
Because I couldn't shut up about it at work.
Well, I wasn't going to say that, but yeah.
Well, art takes many forms, and we want to celebrate all of them. And I think being able to open someone's mind to something, if we've done that even once, is a positive thing. So absolutely. Food is art. Chocolate is art.
Chocolate is art.
I've been trying to tell my cardiologist that for.
I'm just eating art. It's healthy.
How much chocolate do you consume? None, but I consume a lot of art.
That's right.
Just don't stare at the chocolate bowl directly behind me.
That's right. Pay no attention to the man behind the chocolate curtain.
I mean, thinking through, because with Charlene, you write the music for that. You are also composing music for the Menders, or with your band, and they both have very distinctive sounds. Like the Menders does not always sound like Charlene, and then you have all of this other musical knowledge. How do you kind of mentally shift between writing for the Menders versus writing for Charlene?
I don't know. It's something I think I just know when I'm starting on a song, what my intent for it is. A lot of times with Charlene, it's very, it's like I'm commissioning myself to do a particular type of song for an upcoming episode. So that kind of helps compartmentalize it a little bit. Like I'll sit down with the intent to write a song for Charlene. Other times, well, I think the interesting thing with the Mender stuff is, especially pretty much everything we have out there on Spotify or Apple or wherever, Amazon, and all these LimeWire, BearShare, if people are still doing that.
We might have heard of some of those.
We all of those songs start out pretty close to Charlene songs, really. Like everything I kind of write usually starts as a very kind of folky, country, bluegrassy sort of number. And then once I make the decision for one reason or another to bring that to the band, once all the other guys get their hands on it, it becomes a Menders song. It becomes something else. It sonically changes a lot, which is fantastic. And a lot of times, I'll have a song that I'll have it in my head like, oh, this is going to be a very Beatles-y sort of thing, or whatever the case may be. And then once the band gets it, it comes out something different. And our Wes or Johnny, another member that the band plays keys and does co-lead vocals. We've got such an eclectic taste in music between the five of us that, again, something I bring to the table with an intent. They're like, oh, I'm going to do this thing on the keys. It reminds me of Prince, and it just becomes this whole other thing. So it's easy for the Charlene stuff to sound like Charlene because I'm the only one getting any input on it. I think ultimately is what it's the other guy's influence that really shapes it into something else, and me kind of letting go of the reins a little bit. Although they might not always agree that I do that, but I try to the best I can.
I love that it becomes such a collaboration and that you're actively allowing this collaboration to happen, because a lot of times it's like we've had this conversation before that when you create something and you get other people's input on it, it's like it starts to change it, and sometimes that can feel like a personal attack. What do you think about to kind of prevent it from being a personal attack and recognize that it's becoming something different and becoming a group collaboration?
Part of it is I think that when I have written something new, and if it's not something I wrote specifically for Charlene, sometimes I'll write something and kind of put it on the back burner. And then at some point when I'm writing a story for Charlene, I'll be like, ooh, I got that song that kind of fits this thematically, so I'll pull that. But if it's something that I haven't written specifically for Charlene, I know when I bring it to the band, like I already have to mentally know that this is going to change. So if it's something that I really don't want it to change, I don't usually bring it to them. I'll keep that and put it in my back pocket for Charlene, or again, if it's something I've written specifically for it, then I kind of write it with that intent that like this is not going to leave me. So there's like a mental sort of leap I go ahead and make once I'm like, this is going to be a Menders song, and I know that everybody's going to get their hands on it and change what this sounds like. So I kind of know that going into it, and then once we get into it, it's as corny as this sounds, kind of trusting the process, giving into the process. Because there are times where a song will start taking a direction where I'm like, man, I'm not sure about this. This is not what I had intended. But then once we kind of iron out some of the kinks and whatnot, I'm like, okay, no, this is kind of cool actually. And then also I think I just have to kind of trust my own intuition, having done all this for so long now, to be able to say, okay, I'm cool if we change this, and this, but I want this part to sound like this. And the band's usually pretty receptive to that, and they can tell when something's important to me. Or at least that's my perception of it. I might just be a intolerable a-hole. Maybe.
No.
But, I think that's too. We've been doing the Menders for like 13 years now. So we've definitely had arguments and disagreements on stuff, but we always were able to kind of talk through it. So when we do have those moments where I'm like, I don't know, and Johnny, again, who writes, half our songs, we kind of split lead vocal duties and songwriting duties and help each other on each other's songs and whatnot. We just both have that point where I'll be like, hey, what about this line, Johnny? And I'll recommend a change. And if he's not receptive to it, he'll just be like, this line's really important to me. Thematically, it kind of ties the song together here, and here. And I'll do the same thing with him. So it's just a level of honesty and collaboration and something that's just taken time and time and time to really fine tune and get to a place where we just really trust each other to have our hands on each other's creations and whatnot.
There's something to be said about that with artistic teams in general, with any kind of art that can apply to like a photography project or some other collaborative art form where you're bringing in other people's opinions, and if you have a good team, you can, to some degree, like you said, kind of give up that control and go, okay, do your thing. I trust you because your level of art, and like you've already worked out those kinks of what can you feel comfortable saying, or what do you feel comfortable saying or doing or receiving.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty awesome that you found that right spot with this group to be able to express yourself and also to collaborate in a really, it sounds like a really healthy way, but also like a way that's obviously really working for you.
Yeah, it's I appreciate that. It is something. There's friction here and there where there's a song. I won't name it just in case it comes back into the fold at some point. But there's a Mender song that I love. I sing it. It's a one I sing lead on. One I wrote. I just really like it, and I can tell no one else in the band cares about it at all. So like sometimes those moments are kind of tough, and that's when I'm like, doing things on your own is, but it's the grass is greener thing. There's times where I'm doing something by myself and I'm like, I like how solitary it is and how self-reflective it can be and whatnot. But then as soon as I get, with the guys in my band, that I love that part of it. I love that process. And it's also just, our batting average is pretty good. There's rarely been something that I've brought to them that we either couldn't figure out or they butchered, so to speak. I mean, there's been things that we've worked on and we can all tell collectively this is not working, and we just stop working on it. So it's just it's a lot of trial and error and a lot of trust and whatnot. But it is important. What about with y'all and the podcast? Like how much, because the interview format is I love and I find fascinating, because the podcast I do with my friend Jason, Best of Worst of, that's just me and him. There's no like other party,
Right.
There's not so we've got a good camaraderie. We know going into an episode kind of what our talking points are going to be. We prepare some of them. We let the conversation go its own way. But how much, do y'all collaborate on like an intent for an episode? Like if you're having a guest on, and be like, hey, what kind of questions do we want to ask? Do we want to, is there a certain place we don't want to go into? We want to talk about this. We don't want to talk about that. I'm just curious what that looks like.
Emily, you go first.
I was just going to say the same thing. This is how our conversations go. Well, we both went into this with the idea of what we wanted it to be and didn't want it to be. So I think in general we see eye to eye and we're on the same page from the get-go. So that makes it a lot easier. Mm-hmm. We normally just let natural curiosity guide the podcast. So the questions we ask are usually very genuine in the moment. I've thought about this because I've been listening to you and because I read up. We stalked you beforehand. And so usually it's just natural curiosity. However, we've learned that there are some guests that make us more nervous than others. And so that natural curiosity is still there, but we don't want to let nerves get in the way of having a good show and like coming across as normal people because we're very much like, eek, for some people. And so we do sometimes have meetings where we're like, all right, we want to prep some questions, or we'll email each other back and forth some ideas like, hey, let's make sure we ask this, or hey, I just discovered this. Sandra, our producer's so good with helping us think of questions for some of the guests, like especially ones she found where she's like, she knows more about them than we do. So she'll send us like some of the research she's done or some questions to ask, which is helpful. But like we already know we want to leave religion and politics out of it, which is why like if we had, and we kind of talked about this, like if we had Kamala Harris on the show, that might be controversial for some people, but we would still talk about art.
Yeah. It's important. It's I imagine a tricky line to walk, right? Like you want to talk about, I think having it focused on art, right? Like that's the focal point. It helps it keep the topics on track, but also keeps it evergreen. I'd imagine, I think, there's something to be said for speaking political opinions and sharing that with the world and whatnot. But when it comes to art, whether it's a podcast or a song, or I've found you have to be selective about it. And it's not that you don't want to make a statement or share your opinion, but you also don't want something to be really dated,
Right.
in like a year, like, oh man, they really wrote a whole song about Watergate, like, like, go back and listen to all of that,
Right.
early, late 60s, early 70s music. They're like name dropping, things that are going on there.
True. Well, I want to know what Trey's answer to this is too.
Before I answer, we got a message from backstage. Your microphone is showing low.
Oh yeah, I see it. Thank you.
No problem. So for I'm gonna echo pretty much what Emily said, but I'm also not gonna hide the fact that we've had an occasional friction on a few topics for things, like what you have with your band. Sometimes we'll converse about things, we'll have some slightly differing opinions on it, but more often than not, we'll share the reasons we think that it's a good idea, or we kind of hash it out and be each other's sounding boards. So by the end of it, we work through it in a very diplomatic fashion. I've only left the conversations with a couple of black eyes before. It's fine.
Ignore the one he has now. That had nothing to do with me.
No, that's just genetics. So really, we are really amicable people, and we really find the pleasure in talking about art and really digging in and honing in. So I don't want it to feel so prescriptive, like we see a lot of these recorded interviews and conversations. We figured out fairly early on we wanted it to be a conversation and to feel like a conversation, and we can't do that if we're reading from a script.
Yeah. So there.
Why did y'all send me a script then? That's what I've been reading from this whole time.
Right. It's a common thing where a guest will write back in and say, "Hey, can you send me the list of questions you'll be asking me?" And we're like, "Not really."
No.
We can't. We don't have one. So we'll usually send the things we tend to ask naturally anyway, what your birthstone is. But
I have no idea.
We ask there, in the scope of our show, we have a few questions that we tend to ask most people, or we cycle through them. And so if it feels right, we ask it. So we'll throw those out there to them. But otherwise we have to just reiterate, this definitely is more of a chat than an interview, because we don't want it to be like this one-sided thing. I mean, it can be, and it has at times, but
yeah, I'd imagine it can be. There's a wild card element, right? Like you can sit and chat with somebody, pre-recording, and I'd imagine there's probably been folks that you had a good conversation with, and all right, and we're live, and then they just kind of sort of clam up.
There are so many times that we've gotten to know someone right before the show. When we get into it and we're excited, we're chatting with each other about things we have in common, or we all have some pet or something, and then that we go, okay, and we're live, and then it's now we know too much about you, and now the rest of the show isn't as exciting. I don't know how to describe that, other than there are times when I've gone, hold on to that, don't answer it, we're going to answer it later, because if you answer it now, that's something that I would rather have on the show for people to hear than to get all of this greatness out now.
Save it for the air.
Yeah. I don't want to, and I hate doing that too, because I'm no, we're getting along great. This is so awesome.
Jason and I have that with Best of Worst of. We'll chat a little bit. We're before we record, we're getting stuff set up, whatever, and he'll start. I would say that's kind of the drawback to starting a podcast with a friend, is that what happens is a lot of times, even we'll just be talking, just texting, or if we go out to lunch or something, and we'll start talking about something, no, wait, save that for the podcast. Save that.
Yeah.
Let's make a note of that in our doc, that to save that for the podcast. Or I said, we'll be talking before we record, and we'll be start. He's like, wait, hang on, let's save it. So it makes makes our friendship feel maybe false, but that's okay. It's all for streams and likes and downloads.
Which part is real, the podcast or the friendship?
It's what's holding us together at this point. It's like a sham marriage.
Which reminds me, Trey, we should start a doc because of that. It's not the sham marriage part. But
Thank you for clarifying. I got worried for a second. So
we could really turn this upside down.
let's not. But I appreciate it. So like thinking back to Charlene, how do you save things for the podcast? Like, how do you remember ideas that you have? Like, oh my God, I thought about that 2 days ago, and I wanted to do that for the podcast.
So what will happen a lot of times with the songs? There's only actually the 11 episodes that I've done of Charlene at this point. Like maybe 3 of them are actual, like I wrote a song for the podcast. Like I already had the story in place and I needed a song to go along with it. Most of the time what ends up happening is I just have a pretty deep well of songs that I've written and voice memos, voice recordings on my phone, or just, notes, lyrics and stuff, things that'll kind of jog my memory on a song. And a lot of times what'll happen is I'll write a story and then I just kind of go back through that sort of either mental discography of unreleased things, or literally go through my memos sometimes and find something that fits something, again, either thematically, lyrically. Sometimes it's just a feel, if a story is kind of has like a wistfulness, melancholy to it, I'll find something that kind of pairs with that. But there have been situations where I've specifically written something for the podcast. Like I had last year at Thanksgiving, I had written a story that took place on Thanksgiving. And I was like, well, what do I do with that? I guess I need to write a Thanksgiving song. So I wrote this kind of sad little love song called Macy's Day. That's like kind of about someone wanting to spend Thanksgiving with their unrequited love. Like, so in those situations, it's very easy because I know it, again, it's like I know that I have to write something for this. It's an assignment to myself. Sometimes it's just songs that have just set on the back burner. Maybe those were songs that were intended for the Menders that just never came to fruition. Sometimes they're songs we tried and they just didn't work out for some reason. They didn't quite fit our sound. They were, that tends to be more of a garage rock sort of effort. Sometimes songs just don't translate to that well. And then, there are occasions where I just write something. A lot of times it kind of boils down to, this is too pretty for the Menders, which makes it sound like our music is not. I think our music's gross and ugly, but there's just there's a level of showmanship and kind of an attitude, I guess, to that. So when something feels a little more personal, that usually is the stuff that ends up staying with the Charlene. It's just kind of a I know it when I hear it sort of thing.
And you do so much when you, to kind of piggyback off of this, you do so many different things. You have the Charlene, the Menders, the best of worst of, plus work, family. How do you do it all? And what designer are you wearing on the runway today?
This is Margaritaville.
I love that you knew it right away. That's wonderful.
But I got it bargain hunt, which is like if a TJ Maxx or a Ross was in foreclosure.
Oh, okay.
Oh man, I forgot the question now.
How do you do it all? Like, that's a lot.
Just barely.
Okay.
No, it's I have to enjoy it. I have to, if I didn't enjoy any of them, there would be, I wouldn't actively pursue it. If any of it ever lost its fun or became more work than it felt like it was worth, because it certainly, can put a strain on, on my wife, my children, especially like the band. We're less active than we were in years past. We all got young children, and some of us have older children, but we all have just at different stages of life. And, so that for a while was what took a lot out of, a lot of time away from my family. We're practicing. At one point we were playing 4 or 5 gigs a month, which isn't that much, but when you're doing it all on the weekend,
yeah,
you're talking pretty much every weekend. I'm like, hey, sweetie, got a show this weekend, My wife is also a big part of that. She's very, supportive and,
Awesome.
and allows, kind of is willing to, take on a little extra work so that I can pursue these ventures. And I try to do the same for her. Um, but a lot of it, that's kind of the thing with Charlene, why I just recently kind of restarted that. I had taken like 6 months off from it. Was There's a structure to it all that I enjoy. I like having these different outlets for these different interests that I have. And I find that when one goes away, or is maybe like on a bit of a hiatus, that if there's a part of me longing to do it, then I probably should, find time for it. Beyond that, it's just, like the writing, especially. There's days where I've worked all day. I've got the children in bed. Me and my wife, or finally it's 9:30 at night and we finally have time to ourselves. It is really hard to motivate myself to then go write a story or to work on a draft of a story or whatever. So, it just takes a lot of dedication and I think ultimately it often doesn't feel like something I want to do. It feels like something I need to do, as corny as that can sound. But and my wife sees that too, that if I don't have some of these creative outlets, I'm just not quite the same person. It's just kind of a part of who I am.
Do you find yourself purposefully fueling that, or does it just naturally kind of, you have creative motivation and inspiration?
It kind of ebbs and flows. There's with the Menders, the good thing is that, there's like, we'll go through like creative surges where we just like are writing. But the good thing about having a songwriting partner in that, and really all the other guys, so we've all come up with different things that have become songs, but the lion's share of it is me and Johnny. If I'm in having a case of writer's block in that particular venture, I can be like, hey, Johnny, do you have anything? I don't have anything. So that helps. I don't have that with Charlene, obviously, because that is me, but all me. But the thing I find with that is the structure I've made for it, where it's like this thematic, sort of connection, like there's the song and the story are connected in some way. If I'm having a bit of a creative issue or like not finding as much purpose in like a story that I'm writing, I'll look at songs that I have and I'll say, okay, well, I've got this song this Christmas song that I wrote, I'll save that for a Christmas episode, and it helps me kind of focus what kind of story I need to write. So I sort of try to build in some different mechanisms to give myself inspiration. Same thing with the songs. Like I'll have a story that I've written. I'm like, I don't really have anything to pair with this. Well, the story is kind of the blueprint for what the song should be. So some of those mechanisms help make it creative. It's like I have a prompt,
Yeah.
Like those like writing journals that like write a story a day kind of thing. Like write a story about a shark, or or like when you're in elementary school, they'll be like, write a story that contains the words werewolf, bus, scuba, or whatever. So there's like mechanisms I've made for myself in that too, where I can, if I'm feeling a bit wayward, I can like, well, let me just look back through the song catalog and see what I have. Maybe that'll jog something. And often too with Charlene, it'll be like the time of the year. Like I just had this story I put out last month for the kind of new season, so to speak, of that. And I was like, okay, I don't really know what the next story will be. And I started thinking, I was like, well, July 4th is coming up. I was like, I wonder if I could write something around that. And that was enough to get the hamster moving in the wheel. And then I started looking back at old songs and I was like, ooh, I have a kind of slightly political song that I've written, but very thinly veiled maybe, but it's a very metaphorical sort of political thing. But I'm like, well, that'll go well with that. So again, just sort of looking at all that, gave me the idea that I didn't have, prior to it. So I have a lot of safety nets for myself.
Well, I think that's really smart to have so many diverse interests and allow yourself the ability to kind of catalog things away, because you really never know when an idea is going to come back. Like there are ideas for cosplays that I've got sitting over there in pattern form that I'm like, right, I have it written on the back of here which cosplay I want to do, and I want to go back to this.
Yeah.
Cut to the fact that I've got 45 patterns, and all of them with different ideas for things. It's like, use this arm, but put it on this jacket and do this with this. And yeah, but still, I think it's incredible to keep those ideas cataloged because you never know when they're going to be impactful or when they're going to come circling back.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of times, especially with, I've seen that with songwriting, but with stories too, or even like with best of worst stuff, we have that with ideas where we'll be like, "Ooh, what about if we do?" Because the whole kind of structure of that show is, kind of top 5 sort of, list. We do, best movie doctors or best, TV villains or best gas station snacks. Like we do all these different kind of rankings, and but there's a lot of times there'll be like an idea, like, what if we do this? And then we'll start thinking through it. We're like, oh yeah, that's pretty good. And then it just kind of peters out, and we're just like, well, I don't know if there's enough there for it. We'll keep it, kind of put it on that. We have like a doc that Jason, God bless him, keeps up because I'm not great at that part of it. But and when we get like on a week where we're like, either we're just both really busy and we've run out of ideas, and we're like, what are we doing next week for the show? He'll like, let me look back at these. Okay, we talked, 2 months ago about doing, best and worst, alternative sodas. And we're like, okay, let's do that. And then, we're ranking like Code Red versus, Cherry Coke and stuff like that. So I think the cataloging is important. And for me, a lot of times that'll be, a half finished song. I'm like, I don't know what to do with that, but I'll record it to have it for posterity. And then sometimes it's as simple as like, ooh, I like the lyric here. I'm going to use that in this other song. And I've had that with, stories also. So the cataloging is important. And I think applies to a lot of types of art. Maybe not cooking. I guess you probably if you've started to cook something, you should probably finish it.
I mean, I like mold, doesn't everybody?
It's raw.
We wouldn't have cottage cheese without it,
Right.
Is that right? I don't know if that's actually accurate. I'm thinking of blue cheese. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I also know that you're a big movie buff. Do you ever like rewatch anything, or do you ever listen to a particular set of songs for artistic inspiration?
Yeah, actually, that's true. That's actually funny. That used to be, I haven't done it in a while, but that used to be something I did a lot for songwriting when I would be kind of stuck. I would write a song like about a movie. Like we have actually, it's an old song, but the only people that know that are me and the other guys in the Menders. But old to us, new to everyone else. But it's a song that I wrote like 12 years ago when I was I had a day off from work and I was sitting in my apartment watching Rear Window, Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorites. And I just was like, I'm going to write a song about Rear Window. So I wrote this song from these like alternating perspectives of a guy who thinks he's seen a murder and a guy who's trying to cover a murder. So the movie thing actually works its way in more in a lot of different ways. I've done there's song wise. There's a lot of artists I really love. I love the Beatles and Weezer. The Decemberists are like a huge. They do a lot of that story song kind of narrative story songwriting that I really enjoy.
His internet froze.
Uh-oh.
Or his feed anyway. We'll just wait a minute. It's interesting he brought up Rear Window because that just came up in conversation for me yesterday.
Are you
like,
serious?
what are the chances? Yeah, there's a company, and I posted this.
A lot of the times it'll be less of a.
I can't tell if that was left over from before or new. There he dropped. Oh no, he's back.
Got it.
Okay.
There we go.
Welcome back.
I think my son tried to sneak onto Minecraft.
No more bandwidth.
That's right. But yeah, the inspiration comes in a lot of different ways. I mean, there's been times I've like listened to, a band and been like, "Ooh, I've never used that word in a song. Like, I want to use the word conjure in a song." So I kind of try to let it all seep in one way or another. Um, I used to have this practice of when I had like a song, a chord structure figured out, or like a melody, but I had no lyrics. Uh, I would. This will date the story. I had a shelf of DVDs,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and I would read the movie titles in place of the lyrics, and that's why the Menders has a song called "Unbreakable," because
Oh,
as I was playing that, I was like, I was kind of running through it, and when I got to kind of a part of the song, I got to the movie Unbreakable by M. Night Shyamalan. And then when I actually
awesome.
wrote lyrics, I was like, well, I just kind of like Unbreakable there. So I'm going to keep that in. So inspiration comes in all forms. And I just open myself to the process.
Right. It's funny you bring up Rear Window because Rear Window came up in conversation yesterday. There is a company that is doing a Lord of the Rings extended version theater release, and it's just in June, and they're doing like Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, and Return of the King, and they're doing so you can go see it locally.
Oh,
And
that's
it's all over the
cool.
country, which is awesome. But that same company also recently did Rear Window in the theaters. Like you could go see it on the big screen,
Oh,
which I
that's
thought was
cool.
cool because a lot of us have not had that chance.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Uh, that I need to. I think I saw the first two Lord of the Rings in theaters back in the day with my dad. I don't think I actually saw Return of the King when it came out.
Mm.
So that might be something I need to. I love those re-releases for that reason. That was I actually missed it. I was really wanting to go. I wanted to go see the Star Wars Episode One re-release. They just recently did, at least locally to me. There was a theater that was showing it because that was the only one of that prequel trilogy I didn't catch back in the day when I was a kid. Um, I will have to check that. I'd love to see
You
Lord
should.
of the
Yeah,
Rings again in theaters.
it's the one movie. The Return of the King is the one movie that won 11 Academy Awards. So
Yeah, yeah. Which I feels a little. I like that movie, but for me, Fellowship was the best. So, like, for the fact that Fellowship didn't get any seems like I think they just kind of that was okay. They just awarded it for the trilogy, not so much for that specific movie.
yeah, I agree. Fellowship is like the one I love. Like my heart loves that movie. But
Yeah,
yeah.
it feels like a nice warm soup.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does. I love that analogy. I'm gonna use that.
What is that? What is it? Oh, it's going to kill me that I can't remember. The is it Galadriel,
Hmm.
where she has that thing as she's looking at Frodo. She says the or
Oh
pouring the
yeah.
water out.
Yeah,
What is that line?
Instead of a king, dark king, you'll have a queen.
a
That one.
terrible queen or something like that. That's when
Uh,
she's like,
All will love me in
gone.
despair. Yeah.
well,
Yeah,
I think it was right before that. The
Oh,
things
okay.
that are, the things that are, the things that have
Oh yeah.
been.
You will.
That
Yeah.
part.
This pool, this little vessel that you look in reveals the things that were, the things that are, and the things that have not yet come to pass.
Yes.
oh, there you
I
go. See,
I've
I was
seen it
I
too.
was trying to find that line, but my brain kept going to Christmas Carol, specifically Muppet Christmas Carol. But this is I think a line from it's like when Scrooge is like, yeah, I think he's talking to the ghost of Christmas past, and he's like, take me from here or whatever. I don't want to see anymore. It's like, this is, these are the shadows of things that have passed. They are what they are. Don't blame me, kind of thing. That's what I kept going to. I was like, the answer is not always Muppets, Ira. Get away
It
mentally
is
from the Muppets.
many times. It is the answer, but not always.
Can
This
we
is
also
true.
just can we also just talk about how The Muppet Christmas Carol is one of the best Christmas movies out there? Like, I'm sorry that
Yeah.
that might be a hot take, but it is one of the best
Oh,
Christmas
it
movies.
is.
Yeah. I vote for this.
Yeah, it is really good. It's a staple at the house at my house. It's also that is weirdly that's my favorite book. I'm not quite
Hmm.
sure why, but Christmas Carol is I reread it every year, or I listen to the Tim Curry audiobook version on Audible. That
Oh,
is
nice.
fantastic, really good. But it, I love how faithful the Muppet version is. I have a lot of love and reverence for that book, and they include so much stuff in that version that a lot of, more, non-Muppety versions, I think the Muppet thing, it feels like it artistically takes away from it, but they pull off a very faithful adaptation that I think Michael Caine has said it's like one of his favorite roles he's ever done.
Oh, that's awesome. I like this term that I will be using from now on, Muppety versus non-Muppety.
Non-Muppety,
and I think our podcast needs to be more Muppety. We need to get on this direction we have not gone yet, and that is Muppety-ness.
Okay, so what you're telling me is next week I need to just have a Muppet that I'm just controlling during the podcast?
We already are Muppets.
Oh, yeah.
I have a Muppet of myself that I really should have used or started with. Yeah. Actually, the Menders, our most recent album we did, it was called The Devil's Reel, like a fishing reel, I should say.
Gotcha.
REEL. But there's a song on that called Shapes in the Night that we did a music video for, and Johnny in the band, he's if I'm a fan of the Muppets, that dude is like next level. Like he loves the Muppets, and he's very passionate about puppetry. And he had like a bunch of kind of blank slate sort of Muppets that you could like attach features and stuff to, and he made a Muppet for everybody in the band so that one of the scenes in the music video we could have a Muppet version of the band.
I love this so much.
It's on YouTube, and Shapes in the Night. It was really fun. We shot it behind a brewery.
We must
in
go
my
check this
old
out.
Scion. It was all shot like, especially like we're kind of on a road trip. We got green screens and stuff. But there's a scene where we're all Muppets. It's awesome.
It is the first result that comes up if you type in Shapes in the Night. YouTube, it is the first result.
Sweet.
Oh, that's nice.
You did a great job there.
Thank you. And it's that I don't remember where that inspiration came from. I'm talking about inspiration for songs, but that's another one of those. That's a story song. I really like the story behind that I wrote. That one is about a group of people, or I guess just an event happening that is mistaken for the rapture, but it's actually like a mass alien abduction and like kind of cattle herding sort of situation where they're like being abducted for nefarious reasons, but it's being mistaken as like a religious event.
I see.
That's what that's about. And that screams Muppets to me. I don't know.
Isn't that the one that you used on the Christmas episode?
It is.
2023?
An astute observation, Trey.
Thank you.
The last episode of season 1 of Charlene was I had done a Christmas episode as my first episode, and that was a lot more straightforward Christmassy. That was really kind of inspired by Christmas Story. It was me kind of telling the sort of embellished version of a Christmas from my own childhood. So when year 2 came around, I was like, I want to do another Christmas story, but I don't know the right way to do it. That was one where I had that song, and the Menders had recorded it. It was already released on our album and everything. And I was like, well, it's like, that's telling a story. What if I just shape that story out into the story from that song into an actual like short story? So that was one that is very like the story and the song are telling the same narrative tell. And then it was also easy, and some would even say lazy on my part, because then I was like, and I don't have to record anything. I've already got a song. So that's the only episode of the podcast that doesn't have like an acoustic home recording. It's got like a full band production of that song. But yeah, that's the story that it's telling. I always say, I try to make it sound a little more scholarly, and I say, well, it's about the relationship between religion and science and how one can be mistaken for the other. But really, it's about a bunch of people getting abducted by aliens and being like, hey, where's Jesus?
It's not actually deeper than that. Are you familiar with the White Winter Hymnal?
Oh yeah, by Fleet Foxes. Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah. I was
Yeah.
thinking of that for you. Like that would be another interesting take for you
I
to
love that song.
explore
Hmm.
musically or with a story to like explain this song because
Um,
it's wild.
yeah. Well, I've seen conflicting things that it's like a thematic. Like I heard it was about like someone escaping from like a prison camp at one point.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But then I've heard it's a lot more metaphorical than that. That it's about like the end of a relationship or a friendship, and like the blood is sort of metaphorical and all this stuff. Anyway,
Okay.
I'm sure it's researchable, but I do love that song.
Okay. I was thinking it had something to do with some kids ditching the writer in school, like ditching them, leaving him behind. And so he was vengefully writing this song.
Oh,
But I don't now I want to look into it too. We must do this.
that's the beauty of art, right? It's
Yeah.
all true.
We're going to put it on our Modern Romantic Deep Dives episode.
That'll be what we discuss in like a week. Be like, and so this is the research, and pull out a 500-page paper.
Right. It's a 3-hour long episode that's nobody wants to listen to.
Right. And then Trey with the dissenting opinion.
You're wrong. You can't handle the truth. Anyway,
The snow is really ice cream.
are there particular episodes, or are there particular songs that you're attached to, and you just go back and you think, that's a really great story, that's a really great song, or that you're just attached to for a number of various reasons?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess there's something personal with every song, but to some degree. But I will say, that I do a lot of the story writing song. I think when I first got into any kind of creative writing, it was short stories. So I think when I got into songwriting, for me, it was always easier to look at a song with a beginning, middle, end narratively. So what kind of happens then is there's often, I don't feel like this real personal, reflective connection in the lyrics. I like the story, like Shapes in the Night. Like I guess it's without getting into any non-evergreen territory on your show. There's some reflection of my own kind of spiritual sort of musings and stuff, but for the most part, it's just telling the story. Or I've written stories about, like, we have a song on our album on The Devil's Real about a guy that it's kind of Edgar Allan Poe inspired as sort of murder kind of stuff, where he like murders his partner and then is later regretting it and is digging himself a grave next to him. Like it's called Room for Two. So like some of those, like I have no emotional connection to, but but I look at them as just like a story that I'm proud of. But then the Charlene stuff is where I think the more personal songs come in. There's a song in the episode The Afterlife. I think it's episode 3 of season 1. And it's just kind of this story about this guy's sort of journey into the afterlife, I'll say. But the song that I accompany with that, I had written kind of in the wake of my grandmother passing away, and then I had not finished it, and I kind of finished it for the podcast. So that one's one that I rarely go back and listen to anything that I do. That is one I do go back and listen to every once in a while, just because I'm quite proud of it lyrically, at minimum. But I just have a real kind of personal connection to it, and I think it makes me kind of feel closer to her. And that story, I think that story in general is a lot about kind of family and children and whatnot. My son actually has a cameo in the recording of that story. The main character's son has a line, and I got my son to do the line, record it, and so anytime so that one I feel a real personal connection to. So it just kind of depends. I mean, there's a part of me that I'll get guarded sometimes. I feel something get too personal especially if it's for the Menders, because it is kind of on this, we perform it in front of people. But the Charlene stuff, it feels easier for me to kind of silo and connect into personal experience. But I don't know. That's not this. There's Menders songs that I feel very connected to. There's one on our second album. The album's called Nina, called Foot in the Grave. That's kind of a Beatlesy inspired love song I wrote for my wife. So anytime we play that one, I always feel kind of a nice connection with that. And then we move on to the Double Murder song,
Right into that. Naturally.
What I'll say is, honestly, listening through the episodes that you currently have published, I have two favorites. One of those is the New Year's story about it's about Charlene going to a party to be with the girl that he's kind of pining for, and then has this somewhat post-apocalyptic vision in his head. And then the other one was the one that you just released back in May about the brothers with the Mickey Mouse watch.
Yeah.
I think that one in particular, struck a real chord with me on a variety of reasons, but that one was really touching. So for those are Trey's recommendations for episodes. When you're listening to this, please go listen and have your own opinions. And if you would like to give comments, please send them to Please Sponsor Us. We love you at the on top. Have a lovely discourse.
Send your comments to our sponsor line.
Yes.
Call on the line. Oh, we're getting a call now. We're over here on WKGR. Yeah, and I appreciate that. Those are, So it's funny that Charlene started out like when the first two stories, that one and the Christmas story, are both, really mostly true stories. Obviously with some embellishments and some changes to make a narrative happen a little bit better, to give it a more concise ending. And but those were both, I call them my slice of life stories, and those were the first two that I wrote. And then I think I did the Afterlife episode I was talking about, which actually in our chat there, Boots on the Trail, that is the Rob Lowe episode. So which you have to kind of listen to for that to make sense. But the story is called Low Road. But yeah, Rob Lowe makes something of an appearance in that, counterintuitively. But there for a minute, I was worried that I was only, those slice of life stories are pretty easy for me to write. Trey, just when we've talked kind of outside of a podcast structure, I am one to have an anecdote for everything, and I love telling stories, and I have a lot of pretty colorful stories from my childhood and a couple of colorful characters for parents and whatnot. I was worried I was kind of pigeonholing myself into those, but I really haven't done one in a while. So I have an idea for one that has to do with a movie date I went on that I plan on writing sometime soon. But I like that New Year's one a lot too. That is, sadly, that is almost entirely true, minus some of the post-apocalyptic things that are that sort of occur. And then that newest episode, Perseverance, is the kind of theme of that one, and the title, that first episode of season 2 that I've got out now. That's a seed of a story I had for a long time, talking about kind of the catalog, and I had it sort of just in my, physically in my notes, but also just always in the back of my head as a story I wanted to finish, but I never could quite crack the ending. And then once I figured that out, it came together really quick. And that one's kind of real personal to me, just because I've got an older brother who of course love very much. So that brotherly love, sort of sibling love theme, is something I've touched on a few times throughout some of those stories. So I'm glad you enjoy those, and I recommend everybody listen to Trey and go check them out. I'm almost proud of them.
Where do you see, or where would you love for this to go in the future for you? Like, you have 3 major projects that you do artistically, at least the ones we've talked about. So what would you like to see happen with those? Like on a bigger dream kind of.
Yeah.
Or are
That's
they
tough.
okay just how they are?
That's something I've, as I've gotten older, uh, I think I said, this sounds so pessimistic. I said to a friend one time, not too long ago, I said, dreams are a young man's game.
Oh.
But
Oh,
I think
right.
there's, that's a downer of a statement. But I think that what's comforting in that, and I think Trey, you messaged me the other day. There's something I always try to go for bleak hope in what I do. A bleak amount of hope. To make hope can often be not palatable. It's too fluffy. I want it to feel gritty and real,
Mm-hmm.
but still hopeful. But no, I think you have, when you're pursuing art, you have to be comfortable doing it in the current form that you're doing it. If you're sitting there hoping for it to be more, if you're doing it for the sole purpose for it to become a bigger thing, then you're not doing it for the right reasons. You're not going to enjoy it. If it ever becomes bigger, then it's going to be probably kind of a curse, because now you are having, you have an obligation to do this thing that you don't enjoy. So I don't really think in terms of like maybe a tangible goal. I think at this point, something I say in the first couple episodes of the Charlene podcast that I think applies to everything that I do is ultimately I just want people to walk away with it with some kind of connection, that they've made a connection to the story, to the song, to something, and it's connected to something in their lives. If I can continue to do that and grow the scale of that, then I think that's kind of my goal at the moment, is just to connect with as many people and to, share my really specific experiences and stories, and, in a way that counterintuitively does not seem like it would connect. It's kind of that thing when you see on like line and someone will be like, does anyone's parents do this? And you're like, oh my God, I thought my parents were the only one to do that. I want people to kind of walk away from my stories, my songs, with some kind of feeling of that, like they've got a connection to it, that to something personal to them, or just something, that means that is special to them. So
Yeah.
that's the best way I think I can put it. And on a more tangible level, the Menders are actually just we've been on a bit of a hiatus right now, because we had two of our members had recently had a child, and then the other one is about to have a child. So we are, family first sort of band. So we've got
Awesome.
everything kind of on hold. We still get together, those of us who can, and write and go through stuff, but we haven't taken a break on shows and that kind of thing. So we're gearing back up in the fall. So I'm looking forward to that, and just kind of getting back out there and, reminding people that we are at this point a middle-aged dad band, I guess, but we're still out there doing our thing. And hopefully they connect with that. That's the Menders stuff's a spectacle. We get up there, we jump around despite our various ailments and have a good time. So I hope people are able to connect with that in their own way. So.
They're like, yeah, I can connect with that ailment.
Yeah, it makes them like, look at these old guys out there, two-stepping around.
I love the way that you put it, of having that connection, and to some extent, I think that takes having a level of vulnerability, not only with the subject matter, but also with yourself. The way that you framed it, of Charlene being that kind of, that ability for you to, I don't even say that you really just apocalypse anything, or that you kind of bring it into yourself. I think it's sometimes can be, when it gets more personal, there can feel like a lens on you, or a lens on the subject. And the way that you write, for me, it just has a lot of vulnerability to the subject matter and to the story, because it's being told in a somewhat unabashed way. It is very real, it's to the point, it's very, very descriptive in the way that you write, and it's like it's being told from the heart itself. So Emily and I talked about this, I think, in our what is going to be coming out, but at the end of the episode, we talk about a little bit of vulnerability in storytelling. And that's, for me, what really draws me to the way that you write and to your narrative. is that level of connection and that level of vulnerability that you have.
And authenticity.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
I appreciate that. No, yeah, it's like I almost feel like the more specific you get with something, the more granular something gets, the better that connection point becomes. If you write something very broad that's easy to connect to, quote unquote, there's something less personal about that. But if you can listen to a song or a story or read a story or whatnot that's very specific, it makes that connection, when that connection happens, more personal. So I think that's kind of maybe sometimes subconsciously what I'm kind of going for, is a story with a kind of its own real distinct message that when you really sort of start sifting through it, it has a kind of a rich connection point. Again, like if you look at just out without going into any details to not give a spoiler, but that new story, it's telling a very almost kind of dark, sort of very personal story for the character, but the underlying theme is just loss, grief, familial love, that kind of thing, and even deeper than that, loss of youth, like kind of saying, that's something that I think all of us in our 30s are starting to struggle with. It's that and my hairline receding. Those are the two things. That's the next story, is going to be me unpacking how I feel about my going bald. But when the more personal, the more specific, the better that connection point becomes, I think. So, and hopefully makes the story seem more authentic, which is great because all of my stories are actually plagiarized from various college students in my area.
And ChatGPT.
That's it. What I do is I go and act like I'm an adjunct professor at a local college, and like, all right, turn in your assignments, and then I just steal all those stories.
Just take them.
Brilliant. Why didn't I think of that?
I do that under a name that no one knows about. I have a fourth name.
A fourth.
That doesn't show up in internet searches, apparently.
One thing I don't want to forget to say is that you mentioned bleak hope, and I think for that reason alone, you will love Return of the King.
Yeah,
you'll be right on board with that.
Oh, well, no, make no mistake. Just so this is not lost in translation, I have seen all the Lord of the Rings.
Oh, I misunderstood.
I've read all of the books several times. I have not seen them in theater specifically.
Oh, okay.
I saw Fellowship and Two Towers back in the day with my dad. My dad got me into Lord of the Rings back in the day. He read it in the 70s. And then when I got about 6th grade, I read The Hobbit. And then, if there's one thing people take away from this, forget all the names of my various podcasts and things. Just know that I love Lord of the Rings.
That is the most important thing.
That is the most important message. That is really what I want people to walk away with anytime I do anything.
It's the only reason why we had you on.
You know what? Actually, and what's funny is that I was trying to think, it's like, have I worked Lord of the Rings into anything that I've done? And absolutely, there's a huge Lord of the Rings emotional beat in that afterlife Rob Lowe story that comes right towards the end that speaks to my own love of Lord of the Rings and how I kind of got that from something that me and my dad sort of shared. But I'd never caught Return of the King. By the time Return of the King was coming around, I was like 14, and I was like, I'm going doing my own thing, and I didn't go with my dad.
I see.
So now that it's out, I'm like, I should go take my dad to see it, and we can finish off the trilogy.
That would be a great thing to
special.
do. Oh, yeah.
It's so cool.
I'll have to make sure we share with you this company that's putting these on so you can go check them out.
And now Emily can.
I keep seeing like targeted ads for it.
It's probably you're going to see more now that we've said Lord of the Rings so many times. It's called Fathom Events. So,
oh yeah. I've seen where they've done like they'll do like, I don't know, 100 theaters, and they'll show like a Journey concert or something.
Yeah.
June
18th and 15th, Fellowship of the Ring starts again, and then you can go the very next day to see Two Towers, and the next day to see Return of the King. So you don't watch them all, because it's the extended version, I believe.
Oh, it better be.
Yeah.
Aren't those like 4 hours?
Yeah, it's so
At
you're not in the
minimum.
theater for a day and a half. Yeah, it does say extended edition,
Oh man.
but that excuse me, but that way you can go to work or like I don't know, sleep in between, eat some
Who needs
lemon
sleep?
bread.
It's fun. There you go. This fun anecdote for Lord of the Rings. Here's a connection point for me with that. So Frodo and Bilbo share a birthday with me. Our birthdays are all on September 22nd.
Oh.
And what's really fun is, and if you recall, not you, Emily, I know you'll recall. Trey, I think you'll recall. I can't remember where you land, how hard on the Lord of the Rings stuff.
We'll see.
But for any other viewer or listener, in the Fellowship, it starts with Bilbo and Frodo having their joint birthday party. It's Bilbo's 111th, and it's Frodo's 33rd birthday. So on my 33rd birthday, I was like, "Oh, this is my Frodo birthday." It's the exact same day, and I'm turning the same age he is at the beginning of Fellowship of the Ring.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then I'm like, I wonder what day, if they say in the book what day that birthday happens on. And it was on a Thursday, and my 33rd birthday was on a Thursday. So I was,
What?
yeah. So I had like this. So we had a Lord of the Rings party at my
Like the
at my
stars
house.
aligned. That's
yeah, I'm
so
telling you.
perfect.
Yeah, it was amazing. I wish I could remember it better.
Ooh, that's well, I had goosebumps.
Now we did a bonfire. We made some some kind of autumny, folksy sort of meals. There was potatoes and stew and things like that. And then we put on Lord of the Rings on a projector in the yard. It was awesome.
I'm here for it. Absolutely. I love it.
That's incredible. Ira, I don't want to stop the conversation, but I know that we could keep going. However, I have two last questions for you.
Sure.
First one, if there was any musician or author or someone from the past that you would want to have lunch with, who would it be and why?
And why is it
Do they
Kermit?
have to be from the past?
It doesn't have to be from the past. We'll just
that's-
open it up to anybody.
Okay, I was just curious. Okay, it would be Jim Henson. Yeah.
Same thing.
The blending of satire, of evergreen comedy, family friendly, but still, enough there for the adults, enough there for like it doesn't hold anyone in the audience's hand. Like I love specifically the Muppet stuff. I will say I've never. I like it. I like Dark Crystal. I like Labyrinth. I think, but the Muppets has always been my thing first and foremost as far as Jim Henson's creations. But I would love to sit and pick his brain just as a songwriter. I think people really don't pay attention to how great those early Muppet songs are. Rainbow Connection, and there's one Gonzo has a number in the first Muppet movie called I think it's called Someday I'll Go Back There, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah.
There's like this beautiful ballad.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like these guys were writing unreal music that just because a Muppet is singing it, I don't think it gets quite the artistic reputation that it should. But to be able to do that with a puppet, like if you can make someone cry with a puppet doing a musical number, you've done something special. The comedy, like just the blend of this dry, sarcastic comedy, I would love to. A lot of that tries to find its way, at least, into what I do, especially with the Charlene, my Charlene stuff. So I would love to pick his brain and just figure out what that artistic process looks like to blend all those competing sort of things that should not work together, and it's just lightning in a bottle.
See what you did there. Boots on the Trail said Emily should do her Gonzo impression.
Oh, I'll do my Kermit if you do your Gonzo.
Oh no, I don't want to do Gonzo. Have I done Gonzo on the air already? I feel like
I
I
think
have.
you have. That's how he knows about it.
Is it? I was gonna say, like, how do you know about this? Okay. Yeah, I did. Okay, it has been confirmed. Way back.
I mean,
Yeah, that's where it belongs.
oh, I don't know if there's a time for it to have a reprisal. This would be it.
I agree. Okay, you first then,
Okay,
and I will.
Kermit. All right. I don't want to say. I don't want to just go with the classic "Hi Ho Kermit the Frog." Okay. Thank you for having me on the Modern Romantic.
Wow, that's really good.
That is really good.
That's better Kermit than I do Gonzo. That is
You know,
impressive.
it's also, if you just slight inflection changes, it's Ray Romano. That's great. It's a versatile. Yeah, no.
Oh wow!
Oh.
I never would have thought of that,
Yeah.
but you're right.
And then I can't do it, but I've seen other impressionists say you can also turn it into John C. Reilly very easily. It's like, no, don't touch my drum set, kind of thing.
Oh,
It's there, but
I
that's
hear
not
it.
Anyway, all right, Gonzo.
Camilla! Where's my chicken? Trey! Ira! Where's my chicken?
There, that's it.
I'm not sure, Gonzo. There you go.
So imagine getting that at like working retail and over the loudspeaker comes Gonzo out of nowhere. Just out of nowhere.
Really. I've been waiting for that to happen in all my jobs.
I should get on the loud, like, you can walk over to like a phone at like Walmart or whatever and pick it up and be like,
Attention aisle 3! There's a chicken on the floor!
it's not even that good. Like, I go back and listen to Gonzo and go, I don't even do Gonzo. It's not even Gonzo, but like, it's Gonzo-esque. It's Gonzo enough.
Yeah,
is.
absolutely.
Understand that it is.
No,
It's the essence of Gonzo for sure.
It is, yeah. He doesn't
All right,
have
Trey,
quite as much.
give us Fozzie.
And go.
You're the voice
Fonzie.
actor.
No,
Yeah.
I have not done Fonzie, and I have not practiced, and I'm not going to embarrass myself to try to do
Wait,
even the
Fonzie or Fozzie? What are you saying? 'Cause I'll take
Fozzie.
either one, to be honest.
Fozzie.
Fozzie.
I don't know. I'm trying to remember what Fozzie sounds like. Got it. I thought of it. Okay.
He sounds like Ernie from Sesame Street. That's the exact.
Yeah.
That's the one thing. As much as I love Jim Henson and Frank Oz and all of those original Muppet performers, they all their characters kind of sound the same.
They overlap. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Gonzo is a little Miss Piggy-ish too. Like, from when
Yeah.
I do it, it sounds like that.
Yeah, Piggy. Yeah. Oh gosh, I used to had a little bit of a Piggy impression, but all I could say was "Oh my Kermie," which is just Yoda. It's just Yoda. Oh my Kermie kind of thing.
Yeah, I think whenever she starts screaming, is when it becomes like Gonzo-esque. Sorry, not you, Emily. I'm talking about like when the voice actor
Piggy,
voicing
yes.
Miss Piggy
When I
starts
start
screaming,
screaming.
Well,
that's when it starts to get very, very Gonzo.
Yeah.
not to be that guy, but there are two different performers. Miss Piggy is Frank Oz, who also does Cookie Monster and Yoda and
Okay.
Ernie, Fozzie, and then David Gales is Gonzo.
I love that you know that.
I am very impressed, but I'm not surprised.
Also, David Gales might be the one of the only original performers still performing his character. Everybody else is, they've got new folks that have taken over the roles. They've who understudied under. Anyway,
Time to get David Gales on the show.
but they do all start to kind of blend together. There's definitely a Muppet. There's a high-strung Muppet voice that they all. There's a timbre they all sort of hit together.
The other question I had for you is I want to make sure that our listening audience can keep in contact and make sure that they are listening to your different podcasts. Is there any social media that you stay up to date with, or that you would like to direct our listening audience to?
Stay up to date with is a stretch sometimes. But yes, I'm on Best of Worst of podcast, the pop culture podcast I do with my buddy Jason. You can find that at bowopod.com or at bowopod on any social media platform. Charlene Pod NC is my handle on all the social media platforms for that podcast, which is Charlene Stories and Songs. Excuse me. They're on all of that is on both podcasts are on Spotify, Apple, Google Play, Stitcher, Deezer, Goober, whatever they're called these days.
Goober.
Bleacher, I don't know. Anyway, but and then the Menders were on all the major music platforms. We're on Spotify, Apple, Amazon Music, and the website is the Menders NC, and I think that's our social media handle for everything too. But yeah, all kinds of different things. So if you go check out the Menders and you hate it, give the other stuff a shot because there might be something for you. I've cast a wide enough net.
You've got everybody covered. I highly recommend going and checking all of this out. I think you'll enjoy, like you said, you'll enjoy at least one part of something. So definitely go listen to all of it.
Very much. Thank you.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and I love what you do, and I'm glad that you're doing it. I believe in it.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all having me, and I appreciate anyone who takes a fancy and goes and checks this stuff out. My imposter syndrome is always amazed when someone does give a listen to something I do. So amaze me, please.
And then you can email him because he will read your feedback on the next episode of the podcast.
I love reading emails on the air. It is my favorite. But the problem is that it's 2024, and if only I was Mark Maron and I was like the first person to do a podcast, I would get to read emails all the time.
Well, Ira, I love that you're on the podcast. I love that you shared your artistic insights with us here. And I love what you're doing with your podcast. And I really look forward to hearing the future episodes. So please tell me more about when they get released. Give me a heads up. And to everybody, please go follow Charlene Stories and Songs.
Thank you very much.
As well as the other avenues of artistic output.
Sure.
All of the above.
Much appreciated. And thank y'all again for having me on, letting me share. I mean, you guys have had some heavy hitters on here. You had I can't remember the actress's name, but I listened a little bit to the episode y'all had her on, and then later was like I watched Jury Duty, and she's on that.
Oh, Susan Berger.
Yes.
Yeah. Which I also recognized her from the only season of American Horror Story I watched.
Yes.
Yes.
Roanoke. It's the only one I ever watched because I'm fascinated by the story of the Roanoke colony, and then when y'all had her, I was like, oh, that's her. She's the butcher or something. I can't remember.
She's so fabulous. Yeah. She's
really funny on Jury Duty too.
Yeah, she's brilliant.
Yeah. So anyway, all that is to say, thank y'all for having me on, and thank y'all for giving a platform for all kinds of different artists. It's a special thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. As we close this episode out here, this episode, along with probably every other podcast, now and forever, will be dedicated to Joe Capone, our moderator, fellow comedian, passionate encourager, and greatly missed friend. You can find us pretty much wherever you tune into podcasts. For announcements, updates, and more, please follow us on social media under Modern Romantic. Thanks, everybody, and I hope you find your rainbow connection.